Hey freaks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is JJ, and here on my channel I discuss the stories behind rock and metal concept albums. And my channel started out as basically a Coheed fangirl page, so I'm very excited to be getting into covering Vaxis III, The Father of Make-Believe, which came out just a few months ago, and I just got my box set, this one with this guy in there just a few days ago, so I finally got to read the story and I'm really excited to cover it with you guys. And so this one I'm going to be doing a little bit differently than the past few Coheed albums that I've talked about. I think it's a lot easier to digest the story and the music together when I go track by track, so this is going to be my best interpretation of how the storyline relates to each track on the album. Which I don't know, I kind of prefer to do, but again, it's a little bit harder and it requires a lot of interpretation on my part. So just full disclosure, this is going to be my personal opinion interpretation of how the stories relate to the songs on the album. But yeah, hopefully you guys are all caught up on all the Coheed lore on the Vaxis storyline. If you're not caught up on it, check out my playlist that I have on the Amory Wars. I'll link that up here and down in the description and at the end of this video. If you need a little quick refresher before getting into this, I kind of suggest you get if you have the book, maybe reread it or watch my videos covering Vaxis 1 and 2, because it's been a little while. It's been a couple of years since Vaxis 2 came out, so there's a lot that you kind of need to remember, especially where we left off in the last album. So if you need a quick refresher, that's what my videos are here for. But I really do suggest that you read it for yourself at some point. If you are still waiting on your box set to arrive, please click away from this video. I don't want to give any spoilers. I really think it's best experienced through the storybook that comes with the box set. So if you're waiting on yours, just don't watch this video yet. Click away, because reading the story is really the fun part of it. This is just for maybe people who didn't order the box set, or who have no interest in investing the time into reading the story. But you really should. I always suggest that you read the comics for yourselves. I have a whole video talking about where you can find the comics and what order to read them in. I'll link that somewhere in this video or down in the description. If you can, go get your hands on the actual coffee table book that goes with this album. It's very well written. It's written by Chandra, of course, and the artwork is beautiful. It's just a very well done package, in my opinion. I think they probably will be selling just the coffee table books by themselves, outside of the box set at some point, which they've done with the past two Vaxis albums. But I don't know, I don't think that's available right now, but it might be available sometime in the future. And if you haven't already, make sure you join my Metalhead community. Link is down in the description. Totally free. From there you get access to bonus content and a monthly newsletter from me. Also subscribe if you haven't already, and all that fun stuff. All right, let's get going. We pick up right where we left off in the end of Vaxis 2. So we last left off, the Hoss army has been defeated thanks to Vaxis and the Quintillion Speaker, who is we now call the Quintillion Speaker Quinny for short. We left off on this big cliffhanger where we introduced all these new exciting things. Vaxis is awake, Nyanash is there in all her majesty, and we got this cool Quintillion Speaker as part of our motley crew here that's going to go on this journey with us. Oh, and Cyrus Amory is alive and in this canon, which is so exciting. We talk a lot about Cyrus Amory in this album. Anyway, sorry, let's get into track 1, Yesterday's Lost. We're checking in with all the characters when we start off with this album. That's kind of where I see this track relating to, is where all our characters are currently. Cyrus is suffering from severe memory loss, so he doesn't really know what's going on. He's really lost and confused. Nia is a bit worried about Vaxis. Now he's awake and talking and moving around like a regular 5-year-old would, and Vaxis kind of goes on to explain what he was experiencing while he was in a coma. He got to experience everything, like past, present, future. He was able to kind of be everywhere all at once, and now that he's awake, he feels a little bit limited, and he's happy he's able to interact with his parents and everything, but at the same time he sort of misses being able to connect with the other windows, and he's just slowly adjusting to this new state that he's currently in. And so Nas and Nia are also adjusting as well to having a child that is now cognizant and interacting with the world around him. So that's my interpretation of Yesterday's Lost, and that takes us into Goodbye Sunshine, track 2. So the phrase Goodbye Sunshine is uttered by Civ in reference to them being chased by the Haas armada. So the unheavenly creatures, the Traffinder brothers, Nyanasha, Vaxis, Cyrus, and the Quintilian speaker named Quinny are all hightailing it out of town, or out of the galaxy, more like, after what they pulled at the seed. They know that Haas is going to be right on their tail as soon as they have, recuperated their forces to come and chase them. So I think the song also explores Gob and his feelings. So Gob is, again, the parasitic Siamese twin to Civ, and Gob has been known to harbor a crush on Nia in the past. I think it was a little bit more than a crush. I think he was kind of in love with her, and I think has been in love with her after all these years. His love for her has kind of persisted even after, or I guess especially after, the accident that led to Gob needing to survive off of his brother's body. So I think this song is in part referring to Gob kind of letting his love for Nia die, knowing that, he's never going to have a chance with her. First of all, he doesn't even have his own body. Second of all, she's happily married. And so he has to kind of let his feelings for her go. And after the release of the Quintilian speaker, for some reason, Gob and subsequently Civ, long story short, they suffer kind of this medical emergency, which forces the crew to go take them to this black market surgeon, who ends up needing to separate the two brothers into their own bodies. And so the surgery, I think, could have gone well. However, these shadow lifters had intervened, and I will explain a little bit more about these shadow lifters and how they operate here in the next track. But basically, the shadow lifters take over the minds of the doctors and surgeons and have them kill off Civ and implant a secret device into the thigh of Gob's new body when they transfer Gob into his new host body. Sorry, that was a lot of information. I'm going to try and explain a little bit better in this next track. Track 3, Searching for Tomorrow. So the phrase, no use searching for tomorrow if there's distrust in our yesterdays, is said by Tay, or T, who is one of the heads of the House of Star Supremacy. So there's this, big meeting between the heads, and they pretty much waste no time in, putting out the call for capturing the unheavenly creatures. They also desperately want to own the power that they witnessed Vaxis wield when he kind of blew up everything. And so they don't really know how his powers work, but they know that they want to own it. Because, again, if you remember from the last book or the last album, the whole goal of these heads of House of Star Supremacy is that they want to restore their bodies. They're currently decaying away in their bioplative suits, and they're kind of, gonna eventually die, but they want a way to restore themselves, and the way to do that is through a window in a Quintilian speaker and their abilities to perform healing miracles. And so the heads decide to activate these shadow lifters to retrieve the window, the speaker, and apprehend the unheavenly creatures. The shadow lifters are these sort of non-human entities whose superpower involves mind control. And so they're like the most renowned spies in all of the galaxy because the way that they invade another person's mind leaves their victims like completely helpless, and the shadow lifters kind of do their bidding through whoever's mind they took control of, and they sort of leave no trace of having even entered that person's mind. So a shadow lifter could take over your mind and do whatever they wanted to do, and you would have no memory of it, and you wouldn't even realize that they had been there in the first place. And so that is what makes these shadow lifters so powerful and formidable. That takes us into track 4, Father of Make-Believe. So like I mentioned in the previous track, the shadow lifters take control of their victims' minds, but the way that they do this is by plunging them into darkness and kind of like digging through their thoughts, memories, and insecurities, and kind of finding something to exploit that will drive that person to become complicit in whatever the shadow wielders want them to do. And so the shadow wielders are so powerful that no one can fight them off once they enter that person's mind. You're completely merciless once they find that one thread to exploit. Now later on in the story, trying to explain this without giving spoilers because we haven't gotten to that part of the story yet, but later on in the story we find that Vaxis is quote-unquote the father of make-believe, and what that means, it's not really explained. We don't really know what all entails him being the father of make-believe, but what we do know is that he is able to intercept the mind control and pull the victims out of the shadow lifter's grasp. So that's, I guess, one of his abilities, maybe not just as a window, but possibly as being this sort of father of make-believe, this really powerful window, I guess, is kind of how I look at it. I'll explain a little bit more as far as all of that goes in another track. as we get farther into the story. So, track 5, Mary of Mercy. This track is, of course, about Cyrus Amory. And, you know, he is part of this motley crew on the Rix and Freckle trying to outrun the Hoss. Like I mentioned earlier, Cyrus's memory is extremely degraded. Shortly before, he was kind of plucked from the keywork, and, you know, whatever twist of fate got him wrapped up with the quintillion speaker, All Mother's power had finally run out, leaving him completely helpless and alone. So Cyrus had entered the keywork to search for Mary to help aid her to, you know, the paradise part of the afterlife. And he has supposedly spent eons looking for her, you know, meanwhile we get this kind of glimpse of him seeing these red and blue powerful entities sort of warring with each other around him. And so now, currently in the real world, or I guess real time, real place, real world, I don't know, currently where we are in this story, Cyrus is on board the Rix and Freckle, like I said, and he is having a hard time remembering who he is, or even knowing where he's at any given time. And a diagnostic droid diagnoses him with severe neurodegeneration, which is basically saying he has, you know, very advanced Alzheimer's. And so he doesn't remember a lot of things, and he doesn't even know who he is half the time. And on to track 6, Blindside Sunny. So this is our relic from Blindside Sunny. This is his helmet, and I feel like I need to wear it while I explain who Blindside Sunny is. So Blindside is this like wacky, unpredictable character, and he's actually my favorite character of the new characters that we see in this storyline. And so he's this bounty hunter who is hired by Candelaria. And Blindside, he's a bit of a shithead. He's this kind of overgrown man-child, and he's funny as hell, but at the same time, you know, he's also a bad guy. You know, we're not rooting for him, even though I kind of am rooting for him at some point, just because he's so funny. But he has this like transparent skin, so you can kind of see like his whole skeleton and muscles and organs through his through his skin. Despite Blindside being this, you know, sort of wayward and capricious character, he's also a very, very effective bounty hunter, because he always gets them from the blind side, quote unquote. Okay, I can't wear this any longer because I'm getting dizzy. So Blindside Study is just kind of talking about his character and, you know, what he's all about. Also, fun fact, I'm in the music video for Blindside Sunny, so anyway, just throwing that out there. Anyway, that takes us to track 7, Play the Poet. And I think this song delves a little bit more into the mind control by the Shadow Lifters. And so currently we see a race between the Shadow Lifters and Blindside Sunny, you know, like the Shadow Lifters, of course, being hired by the Hoss and Blindside being hired by Candelaria. So it's sort of a race to see who will get there first and who will succeed in their mission first. And Candelaria has a vested interest in getting Vaxis before the Hoss does, because he wants the power of the window for himself, for the same reasons that the Hoss want him to, you know, restore their humanoid bodies. Candelaria is currently harvesting blood of youths to maintain himself, and he'd rather not have to go through all that trouble of harvesting all this blood from all these young people. He'd rather just use a quintillion speaker and therefore Vaxis to heal him and restore his body. However, in this race, it seems the Shadow Lifters seem to be a little bit ahead, since they are these like seemingly ancient beings who have this vast knowledge of the galaxy, and apparently no mind is safe from their powers. So if I were a betting person at this point in the story, I would put my money on the Shadow Lifters, because they really seem unstoppable. Anyway, moving on in the story to track 8, One Last Miracle. So the unheavenly creatures in their kind of ragtag group are on their way through the galaxy seeking refuge from the threat of the Hoss army, and they end up stumbling upon this black hole at the edge of the galaxy. And where this black hole is, there's also a little space station that hovers at the edge of the singularity. And the Rix and Freckle ends up getting towed in to this space station called the Slope. And so when they meet the people residing on the slope, they find them kind and welcoming, which is like, you know, a big change from how they usually end up getting shot at or, you know, double crossed and everything. So they've met with open arms, surprisingly, and the residents of the slope help the group out by offering to let them stay and recoup before they continue on their journey. And of course, among the welcome party is a little girl who appears both young and ancient at the same time. And that's right, you guessed it. The little girl is Chase. When I was reading the story, I was like, saw the picture of, you know, these people, and I was like, the little girl's at the center, and I was like, oh, that looks like Chase. So I was like, no, it can't be she. This like storyline takes place way later. And then I kept reading. I was like, oh my God, it might be Chase. And then finally we get confirmation of it. I'm like, yes, it's Chase. So this is where, if you are not familiar with the rest of the Amory Wars universe, you're like, who is Chase? Then you need to go purchase the rest of the Amory Wars comics so you get caught up on who she is. Because this is a big reveal, and I'm really excited about it. But we get Chase back in this storyline, which is really exciting. But anyway, I digress. In the storybook, Chase uses the phrase "one last miracle" when referring to Vaxis, because she is the one who reveals that Vaxis is this father of make-believe, even though, like I said, we don't really know exactly what that means. However, I think the real miracle here is Chase and, the group stumbling upon, this safe haven at the edge of the galaxy. And the fact that Chase is even still alive and has survived whatever happened, to Heaven's Fence. And so, yeah, it's kind of serendipitous how this group ended up at this place at the edge of the galaxy, at the edge of this black hole, where they are able to find, it's like the one place in the whole galaxy they're able to find the answers that they seek for, who Quinny is and who Cyrus and Nyanasha are. So they're able to get answers here. But more on that in the next track. So track 9, Corner My Confidence. This one was difficult for me to connect the storyline to, because I'm not sure exactly how it connects to the storyline, but my best guess would be that this again has to do with Cyrus Amory. So the slope contains hundreds and hundreds of books, along with knowledge of this place lost to history, this place called Heaven's Fence. And as it turns out, the residents of the slope are actually descendants of Heaven's Fence. So though it's not really explained in detail, we come to understand that the black hole is what is left over of Heaven's Fence, along with the few survivors on board the space station at the time. And so the collapse of Heaven's Fence isn't really explained super well, and I feel like Coheed has timed this perfectly, because we are going to get the final installment of the No World for Tomorrow comic here any day now. Issue 11 is out already. We're just waiting on issue 12, where I presume we will get the answers to how Heaven's Fence has seen its destruction. And so we get a little hint at it in this Vaxis storyline, but there's still questions that need to be answered, and hopefully they'll be answered soon. All of that to say, the people on the slope, their great ancestors were part of Heaven's Fence, and one of the leaders on the slope, his great-great-grandfather was actually Cyrus Amory's colleague, so he knows who Cyrus is. And so then they go about trying to help Cyrus out of his suit and to power up Allmother to see if she has anything in her memory banks that might solve the answer of what all happened, how Cyrus got there, what he's been doing this whole time, yada yada. So I think this song has to do with Cyrus's attachment to Allmother, as well as, subsequently his attachment to Mary at the same time. So Cyrus has this very touching moment with Allmother once she is powered back up, and he's finally able to remember, bits and pieces of who he once was. Track 10, Someone Who Can. Storyline-wise, this is about both Nia and Vaxis. Nia for her insecurities as far as being a mother and, trying to navigate this new situation of her son being awake for the first time. I read the lyrics of this song and then, read, of course, the part of the story where she kind of talks about her doubts, and it's just total mom guilt, which is a real thing, but it's also totally unfounded a lot of the time. So might just be seeing that through my own motherly lens. But Nia desperately wants to be a good mother to Vaxis. But in a matter of moments, she went from being a mother to a comatose kid to being, a mother to a child who is walking and talking. And like I mentioned earlier, Vaxis himself is dealing with a lot of changes as well, that Nia doesn't really know how to help him through. And so this song, I think, can also be seen as an exploration of Vaxis's feelings about being in the here and now for the first time, instead of his consciousness floating through the waves of space and time. He's happy to finally interact with his parents, like I mentioned before, and he's glad to be awake, but sometimes he longs for his previous state. And the person who kind of helps him through this transition is Chase. So Chase is very old. She's kind of on her deathbed, but she does her best trying to kind of mentor Vaxis a little bit. So now we get into the Continuum section. So the Continuum, Part 1, Welcome to Forever, Mr. Nobody. So here the group are kind of debating whether or not to stay on the slope or to continue their journey to find Furanac, which is supposedly this paradise planet, which is where they were headed in the first place before they ended up on the slope. For the first time in a long time, Anas and Nia they feel safe on the slope. They're not looking over their shoulders. And, supposedly no one in the galaxy even knows that the slope exists. And, they're making strides to, I don't know, being happy, like for the first time. Their droid ARP-51 gets all fixed up. Cyrus is doing better now that All-Mother is back and powered up. Naya Nasha has figured out who she is, that she's a prize and that she was once tasked with protecting the keywork. Gob seems to sort of slowly be recovering from his brother's death. And, Vaxis spends his days learning from the scholars on the slope and talking with Chase. And it seems like everyone is starting to kind of heal and maybe even dip their toes into a little bit of safety and happiness for the first time. And so Nas and Nia start to think, maybe they ended up stumbling upon their safe haven. However, the idea is short-lived as the Shadow Lifters come and take over Gob's mind and put the rest of their plan into action. So if you remember, they implanted something into Gob's leg when he was getting his new body surgery. So Gob cuts out what ends up being a containment unit for a red quintillion speaker that was hidden inside his leg during the transplant. And the Shadow Lifters suddenly arrive at the slope and begin their attack, just as Gob lets loose the red speaker, which in turn attacks Quinny, and it makes it so that Vaxis can't connect with Quinny and blast the Shadow Lifters away. So chaos sort of erupts all of a sudden. Shadow Lifters begin to invade Nostran's mind, and it's a firefight between the unheavenly creatures and, the Lifters, and the two opposing quintillion speakers battle it out while Naya Nasha tries to fight as best as she can. And during all of this chaos, Blindside Sunny shows up, and he ends up stealing away an unconscious Vaxis and takes him to Candelaria. So Candelaria then greets Vaxis by saying, "Welcome to forever, Mr. Nobody." And so it would seem Mr. Nobody refers to Vaxis. However, I think Mr. Nobody can also refer to Cyrus, but more on that in the next track. The next track, track 12, Continuum Part 2, The Flood, I believe is a song about two characters' inner struggles. So first, I think it refers to the Shadow Lifters digging into Nostran's mind, trying to take control of him. So like I mentioned earlier, the way the Shadow Lifters work is they make their victims compliant in what they're doing by exploiting the dark parts of their victim's psyche and using that sort of as a Trojan horse to twist them into opening their minds to the Shadow Lifters and, bending them to their will. So the Shadow Lifter goes digging through Nas's mind looking for weaknesses, and again, no one has ever fought off a Shadow Lifter. And so it seems that Nas is about to succumb to the Lifter's power. However, through the dark kaleidoscope of Nas's mind, Vaxis arrives inside of his mind and helps to pull him from the clutches of the Shadow Lifter. So I think that has to do with, I don't think that's a power that all Windows have. I think that's unique to Vaxis himself, and I think that's part of what makes him the father of make-believe. Possibly. I don't know. Anyway, the second character who I think this song is about is also, again, Cyrus. So while all this fighting is going on between the Shadow Lifters and the other characters, Cyrus is fighting his own internal battle. Seeing the red quintillion speaker kind of like jogged his memory, and he remembers where he was right before he was sucked out of the keywork and into Quinny. And so he remembers he was looking for Mary, but he forgot that he actually found her like seconds before, all went dark for him. He found her just before he entered a free fall. And in his panic to, try and pull her into All-Mother's containment unit, he accidentally pulled a number of other souls into his containment unit within All-Mother at the same time. So that brings me to track 13, the Continuum Part 3, Tethered Together. This song, I believe, refers to the souls trapped in Cyrus's suit. So aside from Mary, Cyrus also captured 4 other souls in All-Mother's containment unit. And when all this pandemonium is breaking out on the slope, Cyrus lets out these tethered souls that are within All-Mother. And the souls end up helping Quinny to gain the upper hand against the red quintillion speaker. And Cyrus is finally able to get his moment with Mary, and so he meets with her as this like ghostly blue version of her, and he does his best to try and tell her how sorry he is and try and express all the things that he desperately wanted to tell her. However, he realizes that Mary never actually needed him to help her to the other side. She was ready to say goodbye, but it was Cyrus's own like guilt and remorse that has kept her, tethered to him and kept her from moving on. And so Cyrus has, a moment where he finally relinquishes his hold on her and lets her go. And that takes us into our 14th and final track, the Continuum Part 4, So It Goes. So the story itself ends on a cliffhanger with Blindside Sunny delivering an unconscious Vaxis to Candelaria. And I believe this last song takes place, I have a couple different theories on how this song plays out. So one idea is that this song takes place after the events of the storybook and is about Vaxis being under capture. So while he's unconscious, perhaps he's able to return his mind to, his abilities that he had while he was still in a coma. He gets to have this sort of omnipresent ability that a lot of Windows have. Alternatively, or maybe at the same time, this song I see as being about Chase. And so, like I said, she is on her deathbed. She's very, very old. She's withering away. She's going to die soon. And so I think the song could be from her point of view and how she feels about finding Vaxis at the end of her life and sort of her preparing to move on into death. At one point in the story, she said that she's not afraid to die because once she dies, then she will finally be able to reunite with all of her friends once more. So I thought that was really sweet, and I thought that kind of epitomizes the feeling of this final track on the album. And so there you have it. That is the story behind Vaxis, the father of make-believe, or at least my interpretation of it. I hope it helps you guys envision the album a little bit better when you listen to it, or at least help you gain a new appreciation for the music, or at least another level of appreciation for the music when you listen to this album. Anyway, let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments, like how you tied other things to the story. If you've read the story, let me know what you think about Blindside Sunny and, this cool helmet that we have. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. Side note, about the No World for Tomorrow comics, like that's the final piece into like this whole Amory Wars universe, and like that's the final installment before we jump to the Vaxis timeline. So I'm really excited to see how everything plays out. I covered the first half of the No World for Tomorrow comics already, but I'm excited to cover the last part of the story. I will upload that as soon as I can after issue number 12 comes out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you in advance for all your comments and talking about Coheed related stuff. I'm so jealous if you are getting to see them live. I haven't been able to see them live since their last headlining tour when Vaxis 2 came out. So, let me know your concert experiences down in the comments and let me eat my heart out. Anyway, as always, make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my other playlists on my other videos and join my metalhead community if you feel so inclined. A link is down in the description and it's totally free. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Till next time. They're humanoid bodies.